Evil Ryu is one of Street Fighter's coolest characters, and it's not hard to see why. He strikes a chord that resonates with everyone, as all of us have entertained what it'd be like to give in to the devil on your shoulder. When you pair that relatable theme with the kinds of badass beatdowns he dishes out, you get a character who's seen a slow but effective burn over the years. Unfortunately, Capcom's execution of the latest version of Evil Ryu might have wound up being a straight-up execution of the character himself, thanks to some, shall we say, unthoughtful storytelling that completely deflates everything cool the character has ever been. We'll get into details, but before we try to integrate our shadows, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more Street Fighter exploration videos just like this one. To appreciate the current circumstances, we should recap Evil Ryu's peculiar history as a widely non-canonical character in Street Fighter lore. As a protagonist meant for players to be able to map themselves onto, Standard Ryu represents huge potential to reach unlimited heights. Given Street Fighter's use of fighting as the main means of communication and interaction between characters, the martial art that Ryu is forever refining represents his identity. Said martial art is made up of two key pillars, the Kyoi no Hado, or power of nothingness, and the Satsui no Hado, or killing intent. The latter is a reference to using force or violence in communication, which can quickly fall into the category of evil if imbalanced or misused. Much of Ryu's struggle throughout the course of Street Fighter sees him wrestling with the uncontrolled use of the Satsui no Hado, as he first discovers it within himself when he accidentally taps into it to deliver the scar-causing uppercut that nearly kills Sagat at the end of Street Fighter 1. Ryu develops his relationship with the killing intent in Street Fighter Alpha, wherein Akuma, who is wholly infatuated with this power and seeks to give himself completely over to it, senses it within Ryu and urges him also to give into it so as to become as powerful as possible. Ryu resists, but Capcom decided to manifest a version of him that hypothetically gave in by creating the secret and non-canonical Evil Ryu. This character had abilities of both Akuma and Ryu, as he looked and functioned widely like the Street Fighter poster boy, but could also pull off badass attacks like the Raging Demon. The story continued in Street Fighter 4, wherein Ryu struggled to control his dark inner side, which we learn does make the user incredibly powerful, but simultaneously robs them of their empathy and humanity. The Satsui no Hado threatens to take over Ryu's spirit a few times, but he's able to overcome it thanks to the help of his friends and later from his master, Gouken. Capcom decided to bring Evil Ryu to the playable roster in yet another non-canonical appearance, as they updated the game with both him and Oni, the hypothetical versions of Ryu and Akuma, if they were to fully give in. Evil Ryu was an incredibly popular character in competitive Street Fighter 4 thanks in large part to Daigo Umehara putting on incredible displays with him at major tournament events. As such, appreciation for the character grew even further, and Capcom decided it was time to try to bring him into the fold canonically. In the 4th year of Street Fighter V, Capcom introduced Kage, which means shadow. Kage was clearly a successor to Evil Ryu, as he used the same trademark moves like axe kicks, teleports, and Raging Demon, but was actually written into the canonical story, just not that well. Ryu's main Street Fighter V arc ultimately saw him integrate the Satsui no Hado along with the power of nothingness to reach a balanced level of ability that's even stronger than what one could achieve by using just one or the other. This is actually a beautiful resolution to the character's struggle, as he ultimately figures out how to integrate his shadow instead of trying to repress it. Here's the rub. When Capcom released Kage and his story, they had him emerge from Ryu during a random meditation session. This widely flew in the face of the well-written bow that was integration, as it implied that Ryu hadn't actually achieved full control and put the Satsui no Hado in its proper, usable place, but instead rejected it, and thus Kage physically manifests outside of him. President Teddy Roosevelt's coined phrase, "speak softly but carry a big stick," explores this idea, as speaking softly refers to diplomatic communication, aka the power of nothingness, and the big stick refers to the ability to fight effectively if necessary, which you'd garner conceptually from the Satsui no Hado side. Mastering and balancing both makes you maximally effective at communicating with others and navigating conflicts. Street Fighter lore expressed this concept quite elegantly through Ryu, but then sort of just ruined it by shoehorning Kage in the way it did. What's arguably worse is the way important characters reacted to Kage once he made it out into the wild. Kage appears to and fights Ryu, Sagat, and Akuma in his Street Fighter V story, but all three of them are absolutely apathetic toward him, saying that he's a mere husk or a shell of a true adversary. This is to the point where all three characters lose to Kage because they don't really care enough to put up a fight. So right off the bat, Kage is introduced as this scary monster whom no one is even afraid of. If Ryu's longtime rivals and Ryu himself can't be bothered to take this character seriously, how are we as the audience supposed to see him as the formidable threat Evil Ryu has always been? As a hypothetical, Evil Ryu is an extremely fun concept, but as an antithesis to the actual story Capcom wanted to tell, he kind of needed to stay in that hypothetical realm. His success and appreciation from fans obligated Capcom to write him into Street Fighter's actual lore, but this not only felt forced, but also paradoxical to one of their longest and otherwise most effectively told story threads. This transition turned him from an infinitely interesting concept into an adversary who's already completely conquered. A huge part of the allure of Evil Ryu was the fearsome physical and psychological threats he posed, and while Kage widely did justice to the character in terms of appearance and gameplay, save maybe for those light-up Disneyland horns, the actual story is now in a weird and widely unenticing place. Story and personality aren't everything when it comes to fighting game figures, but we have seen them play critical roles in killing characters. Check out our Necalli, Abel, and Rufus videos for more in-depth examples. And Evil Ryu, a character who was well received and celebrated by fans, got an ice-cold bucket of water dumped onto his otherwise red-hot momentum. Capcom did set us up for a potential alternate timeline thread that would restart around the events of Evil Ryu's first appearance in the alpha days, but there is a lot of fatigue surrounding this particular storytelling device right now in both video games and wider pop culture, so probably not the best route for them to go. Admittedly, it wouldn't be too hard or unheard of for Capcom to simply force the character back onto the scene and kind of ignore or retcon the events that have already transpired, but he'd be standing on extremely shaky ground, to put it lightly. We'll end on a more positive note and say that we do feel like Evil Ryu's legacy is strong enough to get us to overlook his heavily fumbled canonical execution, and we'll just hope for the best as we wait and see if the developers decide to bring him back. But what do you think? Should Capcom go back to a non-canonical version of Evil Ryu, try to salvage Kage's story, or has the character simply been damaged beyond repair at this point? I've been John Velociraptor Guerrero for EventHubs. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.